that's it for now, but as more people come, we'll just keep letting them in. Welcome to Innovative Learning Bite about we're going to have a discussion about the differences between emergency remote instruction, which is what we've been doing, and blended learning, which is hopefully how you can use some of the skills that you've got during this time when we come together again next school year. Hopefully you can adapt and learn a little bit more about that. So we're going to talk about some of those differences. I'm Toni Highlander, Elementary Digital Learning Specialist, and my co-host today is Owen Nesbitt.
I'm Owen, guys. If you don't know me, I'm Secondary Digital Learning. I'm Toni, but for secondary.
And we have a very special guest today. Dr. April May is here to talk to us, and we're going to start by letting her do a little bit of introduction so you know a little bit about who she is in case you haven't met her. So April, take it away.
Okay, so my name is April May. It really is April and May. I have to always lead with that. I have been teaching for, I think, 23 years, and for the last few years I have been 100% invested in blended learning. I was on the grant team with the district, and I really just embraced it and took it into my classroom and did everything that I could in the class. At the same time, I did the online Texas Tech blended learning certificate. So I did get a certificate in the blended learning through them. And then most recently, when I graduated, I finished my dissertation, and my dissertation was on the implementation of blended learning in the 9th grade English classrooms. And I looked at how it was perceived and how mainly it how it affected student engagement. And so that's kind of where I am. That's my study scope, and my research scope is really how to take that blended and how I can really personalize everything for my students. And that's what I have been doing for the last probably 3 years in the English class. 9th grade, I will tell you, I'm in 9th grade. I started teaching in elementary. So way back when I started, I taught 1st grade and 2nd grade. I've taught 6th grade. I've taught college, but I've been in 9th grade, probably the last 10 years, 12 years maybe, 9th grade English. So.
If I can just turn something April set up to 11 real quick. So I've been teaching English for 20 years, and I'm just a big time word nerd. I love, 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 love English. And I can tell all you guys that are here, one of my favorite things to do is just go watch April teach, because she is absolutely amazing. And even 21 years in, there's stuff that I learned from her. So if you get the opportunity, you really should take it, because it's worth your time. She is really phenomenal. And the relationship she builds with those kids are just, it's mind blowing. So I just wanted to kind of give some kudos there.
Well, thank you, Owen. I will say that there were 2 things in probably the last 6 years that were career changing for me. One was visiting the Ron Clark Academy, changed my life as a teacher. And number 2 was going through all of the blended learning process and really implementing it into my classroom. So I will tell you that my number 1 strength is a learner. So I am constantly trying to learn new things. And I like to take everything that's given to me through staff development trainings and everything that comes, trickles from the top down, and figure out how to make it all work in my classroom. And so that's kind of what I did with blended, is put everything that I learned together into one place and tried to make it work. And I'm constantly tweaking and changing things up. So.
Well, I think everyone here has a pretty good understanding that right now we're doing some online education. We've been kind of forced into this situation where whether we were using technology before with our students, we're definitely using it now. It's the only way they have access to us. And so the topic of discussion today is kind of how is what we're doing right now really different from blended learning. So I think April and Owen will let you guys kind of chat about that for a minute. But what's the difference between, you know, having a Canvas course, because you might have a Canvas course in blended learning, or having a Seesaw class or whatever. What's the difference between what we're doing right now and really what is at the heart of blended learning? How are those things different?
Okay. Owen, me? Yes?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. I mean, I was actually going to lead into that too as well, because I wanted to mention to the group that the whole impetus for this course was that there was an article that was talking about, and it was George Couros, right, Tony?
Yeah, I think that was
Um,
the initial article that I had read
yeah,
about the
exactly. And
difference.
it was talking about what we're doing right now is not blended learning; it is emergency remote teaching. Um, and juxtapose that with a lot of, you know, there are some mistaken attitudes that sort of kind of go with online teaching. And so that's one of the things we wanted to talk about was the dichotomy between those two things. So to throw it over to April, what I wanted to ask was, what do you see are the differences? What is blended learning versus emergency remote teaching?
So the biggest difference for me is the personalization. And so I will say that a lot of people will intermix like individualized learning, personalized learning, online learning, remote learning, blended learning. And from my perspective, and the way that Horn and Staker, who kind of set up my blended learning dissertation and the research, is that blended is a way to personalize learning. So let me say this, if you took a college course and you did online learning, they're going to send everything out to you online, but everyone in the classroom is doing the exact same thing. So it's not blended. There's nothing personalized about it. That being said, you can blend in the classroom and the kids never do anything at home, never remote work, and they're blending. Because that blending takes a classroom teacher. And the most important thing is that you have a relationship with your students. So I saw a meme yesterday on Facebook, somebody tagged me in, and it was like the elementary girl that wrote a song about this online learning experience, and it's just her screaming. And, you know, I haven't struggled. Like I teach at the Collegiate Academy now. I left Richland and went to the Collegiate Academy. And we set our classrooms up as blended classrooms from the very beginning. So we know our students. We spent the entire first semester and the fourth 6 weeks getting to know our students. And when you have that relationship with your students, you're able to personalize no matter where you are. You can personalize things in the classroom. You can personalize things remotely. But if you're not using the opportunity to personalize what the students are doing, then it's not technically a blended atmosphere, because you're not using all the tools that you have to do different things for different students. Does that make sense?
It makes sense to me.
Okay.
Totally. So one of the things that I would like you to kind of unpack as well, because relationships are certainly key. And just to put another feather in your cap, I have seen your kids do things for you that other teachers would struggle to get them to do. You had mentioned in one of our recent talks planning for this session, you used a phrase that I thought was really important, and I'd like you to unpack it. So you had mentioned working with a student to personalize their own learning. And I thought that was a really, really cool idea. And I think that's something that you do really well, especially with your one-on-one talks with kids
Okay.
in your teacher-led stations. So could you unpack
Okay.
what that looks like?
Sure. So from the very beginning of the year, I talk to my students about their stats. And I don't use the word data. I changed it to stats because when you start talking about data with students, their face just goes like this. But if you ask them the stats of their favorite basketball player or their stats of their favorite football player or their Fortnite stats, they can tell you those numbers all day long. So I start every year with showing them, here's where you are. And I look at reading screener, I look at star scores, I look at pre-assessments, and I say, okay, here's where you are, and all I want to see from you this year is growth. I'm not going to say that I want you to be on this level. I'm not going to say I need you to make hundreds. I want to see growth. And so the conversation of every single class that I have is let's look for growth. Let's look for growth. And I give them a stats tracker where they are tracking their stats as they grow. And so they'll log their numbers and then they'll set their goals, and then we'll come back after an assignment and see if they have reached those goals. And I do everything competency based. I want to see them grow. We use mastery. They know that 90% is mastery in my classroom, most of them. Now, I will say that once they understand where they are and where they want to go, while they are working on whatever assignments I've given them, I have one-on-one conferences. What I call, and I stole this from Catlin Tucker, she calls it descriptive conferences. And basically it is a conversation of what did you do? How hard was this for you? What could you do better? What kind of growth? Now I have a student, so let me give you an example. I have a student this year who was receiving special ed services. He was in resource classes, and at the CAB, we don't have that. So he's in my English class. And so when he brings work up to me, we have a real conversation. Okay, well, on the pre-assessment, on this skill, you scored a 20%. But you have reassessed, and on this quiz, you made an 80%. Do you think that that is good? I mean, do you feel like you have accomplished that and you're ready to move on, or do you want to try some more? And so giving him that choice of, you know what, I feel good with 80% right now, or I feel good with 70%. I did 3 assignments. I worked really hard. I understand this a lot better now. I'm good. And so he has shown me that he has grown and he has made that choice. But it's not just a choice of, okay, I want to use a red pen versus a blue pen, right? It's a choice. It's agency, and agency and choice, this kind of came out in my dissertation as well, get used interchangeably a lot. And they're not interchangeable words. The agency is the ownership aspect of it. It's you're making a choice because you're owning your learning and you understand what you need to do to make yourself better. So when we have these conversations, that's where the relationship is growing. We are one-on-one. They understand that I'm doing this because I love you and I adore you and I'm pushing you. I'm very honest with them in the classroom about my growth and my learning and, hey, I wasn't able to do this before, but now I can do this. And so I really open myself up to my students so that they feel comfortable, so that then when they're looking at numbers and they see a 20%, they don't just shut down. Okay. When we start, I never show them a final score. So let's say I give a pre-assessment and it has like 8 standards on it. I never show them the final score. And they'll say, oh, did I pass? Did I fail that? Did I pass that? What was my grade? And my response is, I'm not looking at an overall grade. I'm looking at the standards because we need to grow in those standards. We need to learn these skills. And pretty soon they start to pick that up. Okay, I'm not very good at making inferences. I'm not very good at cause and effect. I'm not very good at main idea, whatever the standard is. And through this process, I would say by the beginning of the second semester, like at the beginning of the 4-6 weeks, they were able to take their stats, go back and do a stats update, and prioritize what they needed to learn, prioritize what they needed to do as we were preparing for STAR test. Like, they were able to go back and look at all of their stats and say, okay, over the course of the year, this was my weakest one, this was my strongest one, this is the order in which I'm going to do my STAR boot camp. Because they had choices, ideally, because we didn't get to do that. But they had choices of the order in which they wanted to learn and perfect. So there was a lot in there. I'm happy to go back and clarify any parts of it, but I just wanted you guys to see like how I got from the beginning to that personalized aspect.
April,
Well,
it sounds
one
like
of the things. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, it sounds like you spent a lot of time at the start of the year.
Yes.
Really getting to know your students, getting to know where they are through pre-assessment, but I'm sure also through just spending time with them. I'm curious, and I think Julie Bates put this in the chat too, is like, how do you think this is going to look different for you in the fall if we start like we are now?
Right.
And you don't how do you think that might look different?
So one thing I do is I look at all data. It takes a long time. I have 130. I had 135 students at one time at Richland, which for teaching English, that's a lot of students. Some of you have more, some of you have less. But I look through everything. I mean, everything that I can find in Eduphoria. If I need to pull up elevation, if I need to pull in a Q folder, I look at everything I can. To me, when I think of the word data, and people are always like, oh, it's data-driven, it's database instruction, it's data-driven instruction. To me, data is not just numbers. Okay, so I want to find out everything I can about that family. I'm looking at Skyward. How many kids do they have? How many siblings do they have? We're very lucky that we have a counselor who can really talk to our kids. Now, what we've done in the CAB is we've set up home surveys. We've sent surveys home for our incoming ninth graders. What are your interests? What's going on at your house? How long do you have to study? Are you doing housework? Are you doing chores? How safe do you feel at home? Do you have a quiet space to learn? So I foresee that if we were to start online, that I'm going to do some Zoom sessions. I would like to do some individual Zoom sessions. If I can't get everyone online, because we're very lucky that all of our kids will have technology, I can at least do some online, like some essay writing, some conversation pieces, some reading and getting dialogue back. But I will try. My goal would be to have Zoom sessions with all of my students, or in pairs. Pick a pair, pick somebody you're friends with, let's have a chat. But I will, and parents. We invite parents to all of our Zoom sessions as well. So it would be awesome to have a conversation one day with parents, with their student there, or without their student. Parents, I like to call parents the first week of school and say, is there anything that I need to know about your child? This is this is what we're doing in class. This is how my class is going to be set up. What do you foresee that I need to do to make things easier for your child in my classroom? I send out emails. I do call if I need to. I will not lie and tell you that this is easy. Blended learning from the very beginning. In the very beginning, it is extremely time consuming and front loading. But if you come into my classroom in November, you will see all of my students doing work, and I'm having conversations one-on-one with students at my desk. Or I'm sitting in a group of 4 or 5 students having a lesson while everyone else is working. And so for me, the time that I put in the very beginning is well worth it. I also go to student events. So I'm the one that's at, theater. I'm the one that's at a soccer game, at a football game, because I want to see my students. I want to know what they're interested in. Please invite me to your soccer match or, chess match, whatever it is you do. if you invite me, I will come and watch you. Now, again, are we going to be able to do this at the beginning of the year? So yes, it is going to look different. But I just try to find their interest and I read the books that they read. I will try to watch some shows that they watch, just to have something in common that I can have a conversation with them about. So I don't know exactly what I'm going to be doing in August. So, stay tuned. I will let you know because I am going to have to figure that out as well.
One of the things that you said earlier that keeps jiving with me and always has jived with me as an educator is the agency thing. And I've always referred to it as ownership.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things that I agree with you. I think that one of the most important things is how we can give students the keys to their stats, as you say, as opposed to data. So thanks for sharing that.
I will say, Owen, that I will be very curious to follow these students, because I'm in a very fortunate situation where I have all these students as freshmen, and I'm training them to have this ownership, and then I will have them again next year as sophomores. So I really want, by the second semester of their sophomore year, for them to be running the show in the class. They come in, they know exactly what they're doing. Here's all the things that you need in order to be ready for college at TCC, because their junior year they're taking Comp 1 at TCC. Here are all the standards. This is what it looks like. This is what it means. And my hope is, that 90% of those students, by the end of that second semester next year, will be able to say, okay, I need this, 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 and this. Someone said, how do I make sure they have constant access to their stats? They are in their Google Drive. All of their stats get put back to them, and they're in their Google Drive. Now, we're using Bulb. We're bringing Bulb in as an online kind of portfolio platform thing. And so next year, I hope to have them in Bulb as well. But I do everything backwards. For math, would I do the flipped classroom approach? Yes. Our math teacher, Megan Obeid, if you teach math, you've got to come and watch her, because she's amazing. But she does flip. She has them take notes at home, and then she checks their notes when they come in, and then during class, they're doing activities and working independently and individually on what they need. But yes, she did flipped classroom. Allison Garcia at Richland swears by flipped classroom. She's a math teacher. So absolutely, that's what they're doing.
So I'm going to be really interested to see how your freshmen go next year as well. I think it's going to be really cool. I wouldn't say it's a unique situation, because it doesn't only happen once, but it's going to be a really cool situation to watch kids have the same teacher 2 years in a row and see how that continues to burgeon and grow. Now, so you're going to be teaching freshmen again next year as well. So both freshmen and sophomores.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Excellent. So I guess, do you have any other questions, Toni? Should we open it up to questions, or?
I'd love to open it up to our participants that are here. Just if you have any questions for April while she's here, it's a great time to ask them. You can drop them in the chat if you want, or you want to unmute your mic and chat with us.
Someone said, Kelly Montgomery, I'm excited to know how you package personalized activities for your students. Oh, that's a great question, Kelly. So here's what I did this year. So as an English teacher, I'm very lucky that we have Common Lit that from grade kinder or first grade, whatever, how low they go. Common Lit goes all the way up to 12th grade. And Newsy LA, which they can change their Lexile level. So I will assign, so let's say when we were working on speeches and persuasion and ethos, pathos, logos, I found assignments or articles at every level. And so, yes, it took me longer to go into Common Lit and say, okay, you 10 are doing this, you 3 are doing this, you're going to do this one, and you 10 that need to be pushed are going to do this 11th or 12th grade text. So I was able to use Common Lit to my advantage and give students different articles based on the same subject. And it was amazing. Same thing in News ELA. They know, because they know their stats, they always know their Lexile level. And so they choose their Lexile level while they're reading. And so we're all reading the same thing, but we're working at our own. When I would create my playlist, which is a conversation for a whole nother thing, when I would create my playlist, I would have different choices on that playlist for students. Do you want to do A, B, or C? You've got to do one of these, 3 or 4. Or this person had a playlist that looked like X, Y, and Z, and this person had a playlist that looks like A, B, and C. There's not 60 different playlists, but that personalization comes from students saying, okay, from my playlist, I'm going to choose to do this, this, and this. Here are my stats, and I'm going to choose which things I need to work on. It all goes out through the Google Classroom. Everything is in the Google Classroom. Everything gets turned back into the Google Classroom so that they can right now. And that's why things were so seamless for us when we went remote, is we had already all had our classroom set up through Google Classroom. All 4 of us did. And so there was nothing new about students going in there and seeing their assignments. My agenda is there every week. They know exactly where to look for their work. And so that was very seamless for us. So that's how that's personalized. First grade. Okay, so I talked to my cousin, who is, I call her the elementary expert. She teaches down in Pflugerville, and she teaches 2nd grade. And so I will tell you that this year with my 9th graders, I had a hard time getting my students to like stay on task and not just, we did a whole thing in the summer, and they ended up really loving each other. And so the first day of school, usually in 9th grade, the first week of school, nobody talks to each other. The first day of school this year at the cab, it was crazy. I mean, it was like we were at a concert. They all loved each other so much, and they were so turned up. And so I spent a lot of time kind of bringing it back in, like, you've got to be doing X, Y, and Z. So I say that because I talked to my cousin who teaches 2nd grade, and all of her kids in 2nd grade are using the Google Classroom. They all know how to go to different stations. And as an elementary teacher, when I started, this was after, like, you got the elementary teachers are the heroes. You got like stations, or what do y'all call them? Not stations, centers, or you used to.
Workshop model.
Workshop model. When I started teaching, we had centers with the little people, right? But my cousin has different stations, and she trains her students that, okay, we're all going to go to this station. And she said that, you just practice a station a day or a station a week or whatever. And then the next day you go to 2, and she's like, we have to stop. This was really funny because this would not happen in 9th grade. She said every time that someone messed up, we would stop and say, okay, nope, we didn't all do it. We're going to try it again. Okay, I would have like fist fights in my class if I did that 8 times. But she said that's what we did. She said, I trained them to say, okay, we're going to this station. Now we're going to work for 20 minutes. I'm going to set the timer. Now everybody go to this station, and we're going to work, and we're going to set the timer. And so she really did train her little 2nd graders to move around and to work independently. So now I'm not familiar enough with the 1st grade curriculum to know, but I do know that she had multiple levels of kids reading. And so that's when she would do her reading time, and she would have students over and doing their leveled reading and doing her small groups and working with her kids that were reading below grade level and things like that. So I know it can be done. I know it looks very, very different than it does in high school. And I will say too that if you go into a blend, that's what I think is wonderful about blended, is if you go into Kate Chambers' classroom at Richland High School, it looks very different than my classroom. So blended can look in many different ways. You really have to make it work for you as a teacher and what you are comfortable with. First grade playlist, cans, and I think so. And I actually think they might like it. I make a tic-tac-toe a lot, and I think the elementary kids would love to have a tic-tac-toe. Like, here's your free space, and you've got to do, whatever, but you get to choose which ones you want to do, or you get to a choice of how you're going to do your math, or you have a choice of, and little things like that really just make my students happy is choosing, okay, I want to work in small group with you. I want you to help me on this assignment, or I want to work with a buddy, or I want to work by myself. You would be amazed at the kids that want to work by themselves in high school. Like, no, don't put me in a group. I'm good. And so things like that could go on a playlist, like the mode in which they do the work. Like, are they doing it? I give my kids sometimes options. You don't want to do this on the computer. This is going to be less optional as they get older, because let's face it, college doesn't have those many options. But do you want to I could get you a hard copy. Do you want me to print you a hard copy? Would you rather do this on paper, or would you rather type it? When we do our writing journals, and next year I'm going 100% digital on journal writing. I know it's going to be scary, but I would give kids that option. Do you want to handwrite, or because we're not handwriting our star, we're typing star and we're typing TSI. So do you want to handwrite, or do you want to type? Little things like that give the kids that power to make decisions.
Well, and if I can turn what you're saying up to 11, what you're doing is not only going back to agency, but you are removing any sort of barrier or boundary for them to do it. So
right.
You're doing both as you're working through things. So you're enabling them to complete work in their own fashion, in the way that they want to.
Right. Right.
Well, I will say that listening to you makes me feel so much better. I'm a theater teacher at Halton Middle, and I thought, oh my goodness, what is this going to look like for us, even going online? And so your playlist, I created a theater bingo.
Yes.
Is what we did. And because I knew I would have students who would want to act, some would want to do tech theater, we do a, stretching and relaxation breathing and stuff like that before we go on stage. So I added that, and I went to a TETA theater workshop and found Yoga with Adrienne, who she coaches professional actors and has created a series. And so it's just been, so this is what they've been doing. And then finding out, because I don't have a PLC at our school, it's just within the district. And so learning that we were supposed to give them kind of a test to where I thought, well, we usually use performances. So my last 2 weeks of the semester, if they did a yoga class, I want you, now that you've become more of an expert, I want you to create a 10-minute yoga and record it and send it
Absolutely.
in. Yep. Or just to show their learning. If they did the cardio Broadway dances, this time go through your closet, find some costuming, practice in next week, because this is not due until the next week. So giving them some time, perform a Shakespeare sonnet. And we've done motion film. And so it's just been a variety of things, but to show their learning throughout the whole year, Owen, the struggling tech person here, I created a digital theater memory book, and it was instructions. I titled it, I Would Rather You Do This Wednesday. And this went live last week. And, but I created all these different moments that we covered this year. and things that they should know, like the parts of the stage. And I added journal entries and take this theater quote, find a picture that reflects this quote and tell me what it means to you. So, and those are coming in. Those are due this coming Sunday. So I don't know. I just figured that's a way that 6th, 7th, and 8th graders that I'm just trying to show their learning. But what I tried to impart to them, that this was their memory book. I wasn't sure what yearbooks were going to look like, but some way to document their learning and their theater experience. So I don't know if that's something that is measurable quality-wise, but I just didn't know how to formulate a test to measure, because they're all learning different things.
Oh, girl, yes, you can find a rubric online for everything, and then you can measure it. That's what I do.
Well, I created a rubric.
Well, there you go.
Because there were 10 slides that were required, and they each had 10 points. So, but no, I did create a rubric to go with it.
There you go. You're better than me. I will tell you, after teaching as long as I have, I do not reinvent the wheel. Like, if I can find something that somebody has already done, I am using that and morphing it and twisting it. And there's a rubric out there already, because my lines always move around. I can't get everything to stay in place. So I will take someone else's rubric. One thing I wanted to say, Deanna, in response to what you said, what I was thinking is the final piece for my students at the end of a unit is a written reflection, which as 9th grade, I had them do a written reflection. And as 10th grade, I may change that up. But I would ask them 5 questions. What did you learn about yourself through working through your playlist? Which skills were your strengths? Why do you think you were good at this? Which skills were your weaknesses? Why do you think you struggled with them? What is your plan next time to improve? And then what can Mrs. May help you with? And I tell them, we do this online, and I tell them each question is a paragraph. And then before they know it, they've written an essay, right? Because they've written 4 or 5 paragraphs. But that reflection, that metacognitive, going back and making them look and really open up, it does 2 things. Number 1, I find out if they really learned anything. Because if you ask the student to write, you find out if they really know it. But it's making them stop and see that growth, because some of them don't necessarily recognize that growth for themselves. And so you just gave me an idea that with my sophomores, maybe in the beginning we'll start with writing, but towards the end, you show me how you assess yourself. So do you want to write a poem? Do you want to write a song? Do you want to act it out? Do you want to make a video? Flipgrid. Just go in and talk to me. Some of them are very chatty and they want to talk. But giving them, again, that ownership and how they show you, like what you said, how they show you what they've learned. That is my goal.
Okay. Well, I don't know if I can include that. That's what I've done in years past for them to do an end of year essay. But what I did in their memory book, one of their last slides is, because at the beginning they create their own mission statement, and they get dressed up in costumes, and we make it really big, and we take a class picture with it. So on one of the slides, and what I've done in my example, on one of their slides on how to create this, they just hover and they see my example, which I had loaded with pictures from every class. So they can't change my slide, but they can copy and paste pictures in there. So they found their picture. So one of the slides is their mission possible statement and had all the class pictures. And so the last slide, one of the last slides is, go back and look at your mission statement. Did you meet your class goals? What were ones that were important to you, and how did you meet those goals? So I don't know if...
Yeah, I love that. And actually, we get a lot of students from Halton Middle, so I'm very excited to get some of your 8th graders and be like, you remember when you did this? So, yeah, I think that's awesome.
Okay, but thank you so much for your input.
I will say too, and I've said this once, and if I've said it once, I'll say it a million times, Ms. Davis. You don't give yourself enough credit. You are really, you're way better than you think you are. So you're doing great work. So.
Well, I think we just have a few minutes left. I didn't see any more questions really pop in the chat, but I'd like to open it up to the rest of the participants. If anyone else would like to share a way that you're using some of the pillars of blended learning, or some of the things that April talked about, a way that you're using them now for online emergency remote teaching, or also maybe something sparked you and you think you might try something next school year. Does anybody want to share any insights or thoughts?
Yeah.
I'll share this. Here's the book. It's backward on here, but here's the book by Catlin Tucker, and it dovetails or basically reiterates a lot of what April is saying. And so if you can't remember everything that she said today, a lot, this is a good resource.
Yeah, she has that one. She also has one that's Power Up. And then the original one was like blended learning, 4 through 12. And in that book, she actually breaks down how to blend by content. So there's a whole chapter on things you can do in an English class, and there's a whole chapter on things you can do in a math class. I will tell you that, like Owen, I learn most from all of you. And so for me, the best PD and the best ideas I get are from going in everybody's classes. And so I used a lot of her stuff for theory and for research purposes, but there's so much, you guys, that you can learn just from each other. I mean, little things like, this is really stupid, but this is something that I learned from going into Dana Ford Harris. She was the valedictorian when I graduated from Richland. She's so smart. And I went and watched her engineering class or something, and she had bought little tapes from the dollar store, and she was having kids tape stuff where I was using all these staples and my staplers kept getting jammed and broken, and she was just using little rolls of tape. Things as little as that can change your world. And so I just say that as an example of, you never know what kinds of awesomeness you're going to find when you go and visit other people's classes. And for me, that's the biggest strength that we have as educators.
All right, guys. Well, I guess we're just about out of time. So thank you for coming to spend time with us and spending your lunch with us. And thank you, April, again for being our co-host and our guest, and sharing all your wonderful sort of information and experience with us.
Sure. Send me emails. I'm always around.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much, everyone, for joining us today. And the recording of this session will be posted in our Innovative Learning Bites kitchen if you want to earn your badge for that. As soon as we get the video edited and captioned, you can look for it there. See you all soon.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us for this Innovative Learning Bite. Remember, if you want to connect with us, you can reach out over social media, Facebook and Twitter, or if you're a Birdville employee, please remember to join the Innovative Learning Bites kitchen on Canvas. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.